Ramona Tiravana Chari Ramona Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjari Hari Jaya Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Prabhupada, Jaya. Friends of the whole Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Gaur Bhakti Jai, Sri Radha. Tulasi Bhakti Devi ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Gani ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakti Gani ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru Sri Garanga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhaskar Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesha Tadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Pray from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10 Chapter 47 verse 30. Atman eva Atman Atmanam Suje Hamyanu Palae Atma Mayanu Bhavina Bhutendriya Gunatmana. Atmani, within myself, eva, indeed, Atmana, by myself, Atmanam, myself, Srije, I create, Hanni, I destroy, Anupalaye, I sustain, Atma, my own, Maya, of mystic potency, Anubhavena, by the power, Bhuta, material elements, Indriya, senses, Guna, modes of nature, Atmana, comprising. Translation, by myself I create, sustain, and withdraw myself within myself by the power of my personal energy, which comprises the material elements, the senses, and the modes of nature. Purport, although the Lord is the supreme entity, there is no absolute duality between him and his creation, since the creation is an extension of his being. This oneness is here emphasized by the Lord. So, as I mentioned the other day, the superficial meaning is one of explaining how the Supreme Lord pervades everywhere. And it's an explanation based on acceptance of Krishna as Supreme Lord and as Paramatma. So this verse here also evidently, it looks like it is explaining about how the Lord creates, maintains, and destroys the material world. At the same time, it also presents the idea that the Lord is everything. I create. Atmanam, I create myself. The material world is none different from the Supreme Lord, since the external energy is non-different from the source of the energy. Shakti and Shaktiman are non-different, so therefore Krishna says, I create myself. I create the material world, which is none other than myself. And I do it by myself, no other assistant. In other words, I am supreme, Atmana. And within myself, Atmani, there's nothing else. Everything's within me. So in other words, the Lord is everything. And everything is in the Lord. Nothing outside the Lord. So, he creates, he destroys, he maintains everything. So this is a statement of the supreme position of the Lord, at the same time this idea of non-difference, abheda. And the other statement here is, he does it by the power of Atmamaya, my own potency, my own Shakti. I do it by my own Shakti. So Atmamaya, of course, often means this. I do it by my, I create everything by my Atmamaya, by my energy. So it's all done by the Supreme Lord, ultimately, because the external energy and the internal energy are all parts of the Supreme Lord. And then he also explains Bhuta Indriya Guna Atmana, and that Atmamaya is composed of senses, gross material energy, and gunas, etc. So this is the external or the immediate meaning of the verse, presenting the idea of the Lord being the creator, and he creates the material world through his energy, and he's also non-different from it. So in that sense, how is this a pacification? In one sense, because if we look, we could see that everything is the Lord, because it's his energy. Just as in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna identifies certain things within the material world as himself, like Mount Meru or the Himalayas or the lion, or the makara, or the aswata tree, even though they're material things. He says, these are me. So the idea is that by looking at those things in the material world, we can think of the Supreme Lord. They are vibhutis of the Lord, powers of the Lord. So similarly, we can take anything in the material world and say, that's the external energy of the Lord. It belongs to the Lord, non-different from the Lord. So in this way, we can somehow meditate on the Supreme Lord. This, of course, is a little... but if one is in separation from the Lord, this is one thing one could do. And actually, the Vibhuti Yoga and the Vishwarupa forms are considered to be types of meditation for unadvanced yogis who cannot really understand the spiritual form of the Lord. So they can think of material energy as an aspect of the Lord in this way, connected to the Lord. That is presented here also, that you can do this. So in other words, on this level, it's presenting an idea for meditation on Krishna and separation for yogis, unadvanced yogis, or more or less, which is not so suitable for gopis, advice to gopis. So therefore, that's one explanation, but not so satisfying. Later on, it says, the gopis were satisfied with all this. How could they be satisfied with thinking of themselves as yogis and meditating on material elements as the energy of the Lord? Doesn't make too much sense. So, therefore, that is why the Acharyas give another meaning to the verse. So, though we talk about creation, maintenance, and destruction, we can also think of this not as literal creation, but as manifestation of pastimes, and continuing the pastimes and making the pastimes disappear. Or Lord manifesting his form and making it disappear. So in that sense, we take the words like creation, maintenance, and destruction. So the Lord manifests himself and makes himself disappear by his own energy. And he maintains his presence there by his own energy. So nothing wrong with that. Also, we can say that therefore Krishna says, I manifest myself, Atmanam, which is true. By his own power, his own will, he does that. As Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, I manifest myself in this world by my own energy. Apamaya. Therefore, nothing wrong with that. So in relation to the gopis, of course, then, this is a statement that the Lord can manifest or make himself disappear. But that does not mean that the Lord is not there. It's just that we can't see him, that's all. So it doesn't mean he's not present. We can take this therefore on the spiritual level. The Lord is talking about himself, not material creation, etc. So he does this by his own power, by the power of his Shakti, his Lila Shakti and his Yoga Maya Shakti, etc. Atma Maya Anubhavena. And then we have elements, senses, and gunas. Now, of course, generally these refer to the material elements and material senses and material gunas. But in the spiritual world, we also have spiritual qualities, spiritual senses, spiritual elements, etc. So there's nothing wrong with that either. So the Lord can, through his internal energy, Chit Shakti or Srup Shakti, he manifests the Sandhini Shakti, and the Sandhini Shakti manifests spiritual world, Dhamma. And what's the Dhamma? It's composed of places with trees and mountains and whatever. All sorts of things are there, objects are there. That's the Bhuta. And he manifests forms there by the Sandhini Shakti as well. Forms of the individuals
the spiritual forms of himself and the devotees manifested through his internal energy, Sandhini Shakti. And within those forms we have senses. Krishna has eyes, Krishna has nose, Krishna has ears, Krishna has hands, Krishna has feet, and all the devotees have senses and hands and feet, etc. That's the Indriya, created by or manifested by the internal energy of the Lord in Sandhini Shakti. So, all the Sandhini Shakti manifests senses, forms, etc., bodies in the spiritual world. And then he can make them all disappear also. They're eternal, but they can appear and disappear. Ultimately, depending on Supreme Lord and his will. By his will, he will do that. The others, the jivas, or the devotees there with spiritual bodies and spiritual senses, they cannot usually do this all on their own. It's the Lord that arranges everything so that he disappears, everybody else appears and disappears, etc. So that is why, as I explained, Vishnu Chakravarti explains that there are two Vrindavans when Krishna left. One where Krishna is present and one where Krishna is absent. And there are two sets of Brajavasis as well. Brajavasis in separation from Krishna and Brajavasis in union with Krishna, simultaneously existing. But one form is manifested, prakat, the other is invisible. Later on, he emerges, when he comes back to Vrindavan, he merges the two together. And it's only one form, a prakat form. So by his will, he can manifest or make invisible or whatever, or make two forms or whatever of himself or of everyone else as well, all the persons. Even in Dwarka, it's explained that Krishna married 16,000 queens simultaneously in different palaces. But then the Yadus were in each palace also. So Vasudeva and Devaki were there at each wedding simultaneously. But they're all separate individuals, look like. They're one person, but the Lord can manifest all these separate individuals in different palaces, etc. By his Anubhava, his power, Atmamaya Anubhava. So in other words, in this verse, Krishna is explaining that under his will, he can make the pastimes and everybody in the pastimes appear or disappear according to the particular situation at hand. So that is, in that sense, it's satisfying to the gopis, because this ultimately indicates that in another form they're united with him. Krishna is there in Vrindavan. Of course, he's always there in the spiritual world, and then, as explained in the pastimes in Vrindavan, there's two forms there, the one in union and one in separation. So this is somewhat of a pacification for the gopis, that in another form they are with the Supreme Lord. So, in this way, there is a second meaning, which is more satisfying to the gopis than the superficial meaning that we see here about the Lord creating and destroying the material worlds as the Supreme Lord, etc. In any case, even in the second interpretation, the gopis will have to accept some extraordinary powers of Krishna, because he is making things appear or disappear or whatever. So that is so. But that is acceptable also because everyone in Vrindavan knows that Krishna has special powers. He can do special things. But the main idea is ultimately that it's by his will that he does this, and what is his will? His will is to create pastimes that will ultimately create benefit for everybody, that will increase their bliss. So in this way, there's also a sense of communicating trust. They should trust what he is doing within his pastimes, and is for everyone's betterment. So this is some consolation. As I mentioned, the separation is not eternal. Eventually, the Lord returns, but he will return according to his own will and his own pastimes and whatever, because of certain reasons. So everybody has to have some faith in that. In relation to the Pandavas, they underwent all sorts of troubles for 13 years in the forest or whatever like that. And then people were wondering why Krishna does this. What is this creating difficulties for his own devotees, etc. like that. And even Bismarck says, this is very difficult for us to understand. We don't know how the Lord is doing things and what the ultimate benefit all of this is. What is the plan of the Lord? None of us can really understand this at all. Yet, after the conclusion of the pastimes, then they do understand. Finally, they understand what was the whole purpose of everything. But when the pastimes are taking place, everybody is puzzled. Even these great devotees are puzzled by that. The Lord covers their knowledge with yoga maya potency so they can't understand everything, past, present, future, and they don't understand everything. So only the Lord knows what is the whole plan. So that is the case here with the gopis. They are puzzled and they don't know why this is taking place. But by these verses, then the Lord is explaining something so to convince them that everything is under his control and he's made some arrangements so that for the benefit of everyone. So in this way there is some consolation for them.
In the verse, in this first word, that Atmani. So this Atmani words, I think, support that Upanishad statement that Sarva Khalum Idam Brahma is supported, correct, Maharaj? So means whole creation itself is a Supreme Lord.
That would be more like Surji Atmanam, I create myself.
If you say that everything in me,
everything is Brahman, mean everything is the Supreme Lord would mean one interpretation, of course, is that monism. There's only one thing there. The other is that material world is also here, but it is non-different from the Lord. The Lord is the material cause of everything, and the indirect cause also.
If he is a cause and effect both,
more or less, Achinta Veda Ved.
If he is a cause and effect both, means he himself is a creation.
Yeah, he is everything. Yeah. When it says everything is in him, it's a little bit different. It's not that he is everything, he is the material world, but everything is in him. So in other words, everything in the material world and in the spiritual world is within the Lord, inside him. As all the material worlds and all the jivas, conditioned jivas, are within Mahavishnu, like that. But we can say that everything in the material world and in the spiritual world is within the Lord. Why? Because the Lord pervades everywhere. So even though he has a form like this in Vrindavan, he's also bigger than everything. He is beyond everything, and he includes everything within himself because he is all-pervading by his nature.
That means this again in this Upanishad statement, Anuroniyan Mahatamohiyan, again they supported the same statement.
Yeah.
And another question, Maharaj.
Of course, also we find the same in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is in me, but I am not in them. And I am in everything, but I'm not in everything.
Another question, Maharaj. You are saying that in this, there are two sets of Brajavasis. One is separated and another is...
There's also the idea here that all the cases are represented usually in some statements. that by the Lord, in the Lord, unto the Lord, and accusative case in the Lord, and subjective case I am the Lord, I am. So all the different cases represented. Also many statements like that we'll see in the Bible. So this is some of the cases, the accusative case and the locative case, etc.
So is it like
And the instrumental case.
can you say that Uddhava is explained here this the aspect of Brahman, that the beginning stage of Lord realization. Brahman, he is explaining about the Lord, that the activities of Brahman.
Well, not really Brahman, because this I create. Because Brahman does not create anything. It simply exists.
Another question, Manas, you're saying that in this, and there are two sets of Brajabasis. One is in separated from, another one is in union. So when Krishna come back to Vrindavan, these both merge each other. Both form merge each other.
After he killed Dantavakra,
Yeah.
then he came back to Vrindavan, and then the two, the uppercut and the other one merged together because Krishna came back.
So then, what is the purpose of uppercut then? Because they don't maintain separate always. What is the purpose of behind this uppercut?
Oh, the purpose is that Krishna keeps his promise that he came back soon, not after many years. Because he killed Dantavakra and then came back, but that doesn't fulfill the promise. He came back, but not soon, not after a few months, after many years. So that breaks the promise.
Or can you say that this another statement that Sanatkarma Samhita statement that he never leaves Vrindavan, that also he proved that statement by coming back or by remaining in the Vrindavan?
Well, if he went and came back, that means he went. So that is not always in Vrindavan, isn't it?
Yeah. Another question was, I never heard this before, this that.
In one sense, he never leaves because he's all pervading everywhere. Anyway.
Another question was, I never heard this that Krishna in Dwaraka when he was getting married, that Vasudeva and Devaki also expanded themselves.
They didn't. Krishna expanded them.
Krishna expanded, but what about the Vasudeva and Devaki? Because they
He expanded them. It's not that they do it by their own will. It's under Krishna's will that they are expanded everywhere.
Vasudeva and Devaki
Yeah.
and participate in the marriage ceremony.
Yeah, so it's not that they, at their own volition, do all of this expanding. It's Krishna's will that makes them expand into all these forms.